Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dalaran, and Blizzard did it. They finally added a corruption vendor into patch 8.3. In this video, I'm going to cover everything you need to know in terms of a guide on how to efficiently farm Echoes of Ny'alotha, which will be the currency for corruption gear. Some of the suggestions that I have when it comes to purchasing corruptions, whether it is on mains or alts, and everything you need to know with this brand new system of a corruption vendor being finally added to remove the RNG aspect of corruptions. Well, almost remove the RNG aspect. The vendor is apparently on a rotation, but we'll get into that in this video in just a moment. Let's start off with the basics. First of all, let's talk about the currency you'll be using to buy these corruptions and what you can do right now in the game in order to start collecting this currency so you can get your corruptions when they show up for the vendor. Right now, the currency that we'll be using and actually reusing is Echoes. And Echoes of Ny'alotha, you guys might have already used on your alts in order to get alts caught up with essences. This same currency is going to be used in order to buy corruptions. However, Blizzard decided, just for the sake of, in case somebody was stockpiling a bunch of Echoes, to now increase the amount of Echoes you're rewarded, starting off the Tuesday once they reset, depending if you're an A or EU region. So the Echoes you're going to be earning right now are going to be a lot more, but that's why the prices for things from the vendor are also going to be a lot bigger, so in case somebody was stockpiling, they don't have that massive of an advantage. So most of you guys will get a good chunk of Echoes from day one, from opening your Mythic Plus chest, your PvP chest, doing your world quest, and your visions. Let's go over everything that drops Echoes right now and talk about some of the things that you can farm. And there's actually a lot of avenues for everyone to earn Echoes, whether you PvP or PvE. And even if you're not interested in group content, you can still do a couple things by yourself in order to get Echoes for mains and alts. The guys over at WoW had compiled a full list of the things you can do right now in the game in order to earn Echoes of Ny'alotha. There are some things that are repeated activities like battlegrounds or arenas, and there's other things that are more weekly. So at the top we have Horrific Visions. Since the increase to all the Echoes is going to be ×5 than the original, these are the new numbers. You'll be able to get 250 Echoes for every single boss, for doing the main boss as well as the side zones if you do a full run. Masks don't increase the amount of the Echoes you get, at least as far as I'm aware, and from what I've seen with my guildies, none of them have gotten any increases from it. Major assaults are going to be the big Nazathian assaults that happen from time to time, and minor assaults are going to be the smaller assaults that are not all purpley. You have emissaries, so everybody's out and about doing world quests. Raid bosses seem to avoid any kind of amount between 75 and 125. When it comes to raids and Echoes, it does not seem, at least so far as I'm making this video, could be wrong and I might need to make a correction later, but it doesn't seem that the difficulty of raid increases the amount of Echoes you earn. It's simply a random number between 75 and 125. So let's say if you had to be sat on a certain boss for Mythic because certain other classes were needed, or if you weren't really lucky with a full heroic run, you could just do a full normal clear all the way to N'Zoth and still get all your Echoes. Random battlegrounds, rated arena wins, RBG wins, Mythic Plus dungeons are all repeated content, so you can take whatever aspect of the game you like and start spamming it as much as you want to. And also, doing the Dark Show Warfront on Heroic is going to reward you Echoes. Very unfortunate for everybody on at least US Alliance side that have already done your Warfront. Hopefully maybe Blizzard can do something in order to give you Echoes if you've already completed it this week. And we of course have the weekly bonuses from the PvP chest as well as the Mythic Plus chest. So there's a variety of ways to start working on Echoes right now. Daily activities, spammable activities, and weekly activities. And you can do it for a variety of alts. What I'm probably going to do is try to focus on my main rogue and try to farm as many of these Echoes as possible. And I'll try to do the weekly and certain daily activities if I have the time on a couple characters. Do not underestimate just how much work this is. This is quite a lot of farming now with this new system, and all these daily activities and weekly activities, like someone can actually just sit there and farm them until they get the currency to buy the corruption all in a single sitting if they want to. Which is kind of crazy. A lot of people did ask before for, like, you know, time getting not being in the thing, and it seems that with this system, if a corruption is on the market, you can go and farm it out right now. So better start farming as soon as you can in order to collect the most amount of Echoes once you can buy the specific corruption. I say this because the vendor itself is actually on a rotation. So the amount of corruption displayed on vendor, it looks like there's going to be 6 different corruptions of various tiers. And it seems that it does rotate every 4 days or so. Every time you get a new assault, which is going to be one of the minor assaults, when they rotate, then the vendor will be updated with new corruptions. It's right now completely RNG what the corruptions are going to be. Maybe after a few weeks we'll have a set schedule of which week you're going to have which corruption that you can buy with your echoes. So if you're looking at the vendor right now and you don't see the corruption that you're interested in, still start working on corruptions right now, so then you will be able to have the currency once it's available on the market. It is really weird that Blizzard decided to go with this type of system. People have asked from BFA for a while, hey, we kind of don't want a lot of RNG, and while they did add a vendor where you can buy a specific corruption on a piece of gear, you still have to deal with RNG of its cycling. Maybe Blizzard will go and change this in the future. Maybe they will, maybe we won't, depending on the community feedback, but at least having a vendor is going to eliminate some of that RNG of playing BFA and playing with corruptions. So be sure to be on the lookout from the vendor in case the corruption you're looking for is on the market. But I also want to give you guys a couple tips of which corruptions to look forward to. If you're trying to get some corruptions for your main or alts, which ones I would personally recommend after playing Battle for Azeroth for as long as I have, with some of the corruptions in all aspects of the game. Okay, so first of all, we have to talk about the massive nerf that happened to Gushing Wound. It's one of the stronger corruptions that gives you the most amount of damage for the amount of corruptions. When you have too much corruption, you start to see negative effects. First it's going to be a slow, and as you build more corruption, that slow is going to get worse and worse. Then it's going to be an eyeball that'll start firing shadow damage at you. The more corruption you have, the harder that thing hits. Eventually, you're going to have a Think From Beyond charging at you, trying to decimate you in a single blow. And that thing hurts, especially in PvP. The higher you go, the more damage you start to take, and even you start to take less healing from all sources. So you don't want to play with too much corruption. Gushing Wound has been the best choice if you're trying to get the most amount of damage for the least amount of negative effects. But this one is going to get nerfed by whole 35. Gushing Wound needed a nerf, let's be honest, if you're someone who plays PvP. In arenas, Gushing is way too strong, it's just super consistent, it's always on a target, it can be up to 30% of someone's damage and puts so much pressure on the enemy team that it had to get nerfed. I mean, a lot of people in PvP were asking for maybe Gushing to get nerfed at some point or another, and Blizzard did. But no one expected for Blizzard to also nerf it for PvE. But that's something to account for. When you're looking for Gushing, don't go gushing for Gushing Wounds. Be aware that they're nerfing it next week, so you'll have the full value of it right now, but a week after this, it's not going to be nearly as good. If you're someone who does a lot of raiding and want to go for really good damage in single target or maybe some AoE fights and raids, some of the corruptions you can go for are stars and tentacles, but if you want to be more consistent right now, one of the better corruptions is going to be stats. Raw stats. If your class is good for haste, get some raw haste. If you're a mastery heavy class, get some mastery. Critical strike and versatility, all those stats can make your class consistent. Sure, you could go with a bunch of stars and tentacles, and if everything procs and if the stars line up, then you could get yourself big damage, but that doesn't always happen. So going for extra stats will make sure that your character can do the most amount of damage from your base abilities. Trust me, if you're always trying to play the randomness game, you're not really always gonna get there. Sometimes you'll get lucky, and other times you won't do the damage. So being more consistent and buying corruptions that are more for your stats, depending on which stats are best thing to sim them for sure, or use other websites and sources for guides to find out what is best for your spec or your class. But stats is a good way to go if you really don't want to deal with the RNG of the luck mechanic. Second thing, if you're going to do Mythic Pluses, one of the best, and not always in every situation, but TD, Twilight Devastation, is generally a really good corruption. Any stack of it from 1 to 2, and even if you play a spec that's generally not that good in Mythic Pluses, stacking insane amounts of TD can still proc you quite a bit of AoE. Mythic Pluses is going to be some about boss damage, sure, but a good portion of it is also going to be AoE. And there's a variety of specs in the game that are not that great in AoE from a Mythic Plus perspective. Not everyone is an Outlaw Rogue and a Demon Hunter, but let's say if you're Assassination and you want to trump those Outlaw Rogues, or if you're a Arcane Mage and wants to be competitive, somewhat near a Fire Mage, Going for TD and having it proc during trashbacks and even during boss fights can sometimes be really strong. And outside of that, you should go for stats for sure, especially if you're a range class that can't always be in melee for TD. That is something to definitely take into account, but I've enjoyed TD on a variety of different specs. It can definitely, it's still RNG, but it definitely can make a big difference in terms of the overall AoE output for specs that are just not designed for AoE, something like a survival hunter for example. Finally, in PvP, the best corruption I would recommend is go for stacks of versatility, whether it's a versatility proc from damage you take or corruptions that increase your base versatility. Versatility is almost like PvP resilience from back in the day, but not quite. It works in PvE too, but it's probably the best stat for you when it comes to being defensive. You don't want to die super quickly in PvP. Most classes are going to want to stack a certain amount of haste, maybe critical strike or mastery, but versatility is always going to be, for just about every single spec in the game, increasing your survivability. But of course you can go with other stats too. Critical strike or mass amounts of mastery or insane amounts of haste so you can bust out massive chaos bolts as Destro Warlock. There's plenty of stats for you to choose from, so doing research is always going to be good. But if you're not sure and you're trying to play a spec, versatility for most classes and specs generally tends to do really well in PvP combat. Of course, you can go stars or you can go tentacles, but if you want to be more consistent and survivable, then I think going for more traditional stats like versatility procs and versatility increases baseline from gear might be the best choice to go. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. I tried to give you some advices in what you can do with corruptions, and I tried to give you all the different examples of what you can do right now to farm them, whether you're someone who PvPs solely or whether you're someone who does mostly PvE and you're finally trying to get one good corruption. You can go with RNG corruptions, you can go with the ones for stats. I feel like the stats ones can always be a lot more interesting, being able to buff your character in various ways, massive haste so you're never having to slow cast a single ability, mass amounts of versatility so you're the strongest tank out there, biggest amounts of mastery for a feral so you might finally make that full bleed build work. Right now would be the perfect time to experiment and have some fun with it. Corruptions is a silly system and it's going away in the next expansion, thank God, and a lot of this RNG is also going away as well in Shadowlands, but we might as well have some fun with corruptions. That's all I'm gonna leave it there. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really hope you guys enjoyed. You let me know your thoughts about the corruption vendor, and I'll see all of you guys in another video.